Under a soft, orange evening sky, little Amelia clutched her father's hand as they approached her favorite family restaurant, Benny's Kitchen. It was a Friday ritual. Her dad, Ethan, always brought her here after school. Benny's felt like a second home, filled with familiar faces and the warm scent of garlic bread, laughter, and love. Amelia was a bright-eyed girl, endlessly curious and kind-hearted, always eager to share a smile. But that night, her attention drifted to a small table tucked away by the window, where an elderly man sat alone, gazing sadly into the candlelight on a cupcake. As they settled into their usual booth, Amelia couldn't take her eyes off the man. There was something hauntingly lonely in the way he held his head down, shoulders slightly slumped as if the weight of the world rested on them. She turned to her father, her eyes wide with concern. "Daddy, why is that man all alone?" she whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Ethan followed her gaze and noticed the old man, too. A pang of sadness tugged at his heart. He could see why his daughter was worried. "I don't know, honey," he replied gently. "Maybe he's just having a quiet birthday by himself." Amelia's eyes sparkled with a determination Ethan knew well. "Nobody should have to be alone on their birthday," she insisted, already sliding out of the booth. She looked at her dad with pleading eyes. "Can we go talk to him?" Ethan hesitated, unsure if they should intrude. But as he looked at Amelia's earnest face, he couldn't say no. Together, they walked over to the man's table. Amelia, with a shy smile, spoke up. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice soft but confident. "I'm Amelia, and this is my dad, Ethan. We noticed it's your birthday. Would it be okay if we celebrated with you?" The man looked up, his expression softening as he met Amelia's kind eyes. "Well, aren't you a little angel?" he said with a faint smile. "I'd be honored to have some company." His name, they learned, was Mr. Hughes, and he had been coming to Benny's every Friday for years. He shared stories of his life, his love of books, and his days as a schoolteacher, all while Amelia listened with rapt attention. But that night was more than just an ordinary dinner. As they laughed together and shared slices of cake, Mr. Hughes seemed to come alive, his sadness lifting with each passing story. Little did they know, this chance encounter would change their lives forever. The next morning, as Amelia and Ethan settled into their cozy Saturday routine, a knock on the door interrupted their peaceful breakfast. Standing on the doorstep were two police officers, their faces serious. Ethan's heart raced as he opened the door, his mind filled with worry. "Good morning, sir," one of the officers said, his voice calm but firm. "Are you Ethan Green?" Ethan nodded, confused. "Yes, that's me. Is everything all right?" The officer glanced down, then looked back up, his gaze steady. "We'd like to ask you and your daughter a few questions about an elderly man you spoke with last night at Benny's Kitchen. His name was Mr. Hughes." The mention of Mr. Hughes sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. "Yes, we met. Is he okay?" The officer hesitated, then spoke with a heavy tone. "I'm afraid Mr. Hughes passed away last night. His landlady found him early this morning, and we're trying to gather some information about his last hours." Amelia, who had been listening quietly behind her father, gasped. Tears filled her eyes as she remembered the old man's smile, his kind stories, and how grateful he seemed to have company. Did we do something wrong?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The second officer, a woman with a kind face, knelt down to Amelia's level. "Oh, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong," she reassured her gently. "Actually, from what we've heard, you gave Mr. Hughes a lovely evening. He couldn't stop talking about how kind you were." Ethan wrapped his arm protectively around his daughter, feeling both relief and sorrow. They answered the officer's questions, recounting their conversation with Mr. Hughes, every little detail Amelia could remember. As the officers left, Amelia sat quietly, lost in thought. She had only wanted to make Mr. Hughes happy on his birthday. She never imagined it would be his last one. As news of Mr. Hughes's passing spread, it reached the residents of their small community. Stories began to emerge about the man who had lived a quiet, solitary life in the apartment down the street. Yet, despite his wealth and legacy, Mr. Hughes had been lonely, keeping to himself and rarely reaching out. His only family, a daughter and granddaughter, had died tragically years before, leaving him in silent grief. Amelia's simple act of kindness touched everyone who heard the story. Inspired by her compassion, neighbors and strangers alike began visiting their elderly neighbors, checking in, bringing small gifts, and sharing cups of tea. What began as a small gesture sparked a wave of kindness throughout the town. But there was more. A few days later, Ethan received a call from a lawyer representing Mr. Hughes's estate. "Mr. Green, I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Hughes's will," the lawyer said. "It appears he left specific instructions in case of his passing, and they involve you and your daughter, Amelia." Ethan was speechless. "But we hardly knew him." "Nevertheless," the lawyer continued, "Mr. Hughes was moved by your daughter's kindness. He has requested a meeting to discuss his final wishes and left a letter addressed to Amelia." When they arrived at the lawyer's office, Amelia's heart was racing. She felt both excited and nervous, unsure what to expect. The lawyer, a soft-spoken older gentleman, greeted them warmly. He handed Amelia a letter, the paper yellowed, but the handwriting clear and elegant. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling as she began to read. "Dear Amelia," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. But please don't be sad. Thanks to you, my last birthday was filled with more joy than I'd felt in years. You reminded me of the love I had once known and lost, and for that, I am eternally grateful." The letter went on to reveal that Mr. Hughes had set aside a small fund for Amelia. "It's not much," he wrote, "but I hope it helps you pursue your dreams and continue spreading kindness, just as you did for me. Never forget that a little kindness can change someone's world." The unexpected gift left Amelia speechless. She looked up at her father, tears in her eyes. "Daddy, I didn't do anything special. I just wanted him to feel happy on his birthday." Ethan hugged her tightly, his voice choked with emotion. Sometimes, Amelia, the simplest acts of kindness are the ones that make the biggest difference. As Amelia and Ethan left the lawyer's office, they felt the weight of Mr. Hughes's legacy on their shoulders. Inspired by his generosity, Amelia decided to use the fund to make a difference in her community. She started a project at school to help students in need, sending food home with classmates who didn't have enough to eat. She organized events to visit the elderly in their town, sharing laughter, stories, and friendship with those who felt forgotten. Amelia's compassion and dedication inspired countless others. Her friends, teachers, and even strangers rallied around her, each finding ways to contribute to her efforts. The entire town felt transformed, united by the simple acts of kindness that Amelia had sparked. But just as life seemed to settle, a letter arrived one evening addressed to Ethan. It bore the official seal of the mayor's office, and as he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. The letter announced that the town council had chosen to recognize Amelia's efforts by dedicating a local landmark in honor of her and Mr. Hughes. The town wanted to name a fountain in the Central Park after them, a tribute to their friendship and the wave of compassion it had inspired. The dedication ceremony was set for the following week, and as word spread, the excitement in the community grew. On the day of the event, crowds gathered in the park. Families, friends, and even local news crews came to witness the unveiling. Amelia, dressed in her favorite yellow dress, stood beside her father, her heart racing with excitement and pride. When the mayor finally pulled the cloth away, a plaque revealed itself beneath the flowing water of the fountain. It read, "In memory of Mr. Hughes and in honor of Amelia Green, may kindness ripple across this town as freely as water flows." Amelia looked up at her father, her eyes filled with wonder. "Daddy, did I really do all this?" Ethan smiled, holding her close. "You did, sweetie, and this is just the beginning." As the crowd cheered, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her journey was just starting and that every step she took would carry forward the legacy of kindness that Mr. Hughes had entrusted to her. As the days passed, Amelia felt the warmth of the town's support, and every corner of her small world seemed to glow with a new light. However, while she basked in the love and excitement, she couldn't shake a lingering thought that tugged at her heart, a question that kept her up at night. Why had Mr. Hughes been so alone? One crisp autumn afternoon, Amelia and her father Ethan visited the park to see the newly dedicated fountain. While they sat by the water, a woman approached them, an unfamiliar face with a quiet but intense expression. She introduced herself as Clara, Mr. Hughes's former housekeeper. "I heard about what you did for him," she said, her voice wavering with emotion. "He was such a private man. Not many people got close to him, not even me." After his family, her voice trailed off, and her eyes grew distant. Amelia leaned forward, captivated. "Could you tell me about his family?" she asked softly. She felt she owed it to Mr. Hughes to know more, to understand the man who had become so important to her. Clara hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who nodded gently, encouraging her to continue. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the fountain, as if searching for the right words. Years ago, Mr. Hughes was a different man, warm, spirited, full of life. But one day, he lost his entire family in a car accident. His wife, his daughter, and his little granddaughter. After that, he was never the same. He became withdrawn, never wanted to celebrate anything again. I think he felt that his joy, his purpose, everything had gone with him. Amelia's heart sank. The image of the lonely old man blowing out a single candle on his birthday flickered in her mind, and she realized the depth of his pain. She whispered, "I'm glad I could make him happy, even just for a little while." Clara placed a gentle hand on Amelia's shoulder. "You did more than that, child." For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. In his final moments, he remembered what it was like to love again, to be loved. "And that was because of you." The words filled Amelia with a renewed sense of responsibility. Mr. Hughes had left her more than just a legacy. He had entrusted her with a precious memory of love and hope. As they left the park that day, a quiet determination settled within her. The following weekend, Amelia approached her father with an idea. "Daddy, what if we started a program at school where kids could adopt an elder in the community? There are probably other people like Mr. Hughes who are lonely, right?" Ethan smiled, proud of his daughter's boundless empathy. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. We could reach out to some local centers and see if they'd like to be involved." Over the next few weeks, Amelia's project took on a life of its own. She called it the Golden Friends Initiative, and soon, students at her school were eagerly signing up to visit elderly residents, bringing them handwritten notes, drawings, and small tokens of friendship. The initiative quickly spread beyond the school and into the community, with local businesses, churches, and even the police station joining in to support the cause. One day, Amelia received a letter in the mail. Inside was a small, crinkled photograph of a young girl who looked just like her, holding hands with an elderly man by the ocean. The letter, and signed, read, "Thank you, Amelia, for bringing light to those who thought their days of laughter were over. With every visit, you honor the memory of someone dear. You've given us all a reason to smile again." Amelia showed the letter to her father, and they marveled at how her kindness had resonated so deeply. The mystery of the letter only added to the excitement, and as time went on, she received more letters from grateful families, each expressing the newfound joy their loved ones had experienced through her initiative. Yet, as fulfilling as it was, her path was not without its challenges. One day, Amelia found herself face-to-face with another child at school who scoffed at her efforts. Lucas was known for his sharp tongue and quick wit, but today he seemed especially irritated. "You really think you're making a difference?" he sneered, crossing his arms. "They're old, Amelia. They're going to forget all this by tomorrow." Amelia felt a wave of frustration, but she steadied herself, remembering Mr. Hughes's smile. "It's not about whether they remember every detail," she said calmly. "It's about letting them feel loved, even for a moment." Lucas rolled his eyes. "Whatever. You're just doing it to look good." But his words left a sting. That night, Amelia lay awake, questioning herself. Was she doing this to look good, or to make up for some sense of guilt? Her father noticed her quiet mood at breakfast the next morning and asked her what was wrong. She explained, hesitating as she repeated Lucas's words. "Sweetheart," Ethan said, setting his coffee down and looking at her seriously, "kindness doesn't need an audience or a reward. If you're doing this from your heart, that's all that matters. People will always have something to say, but you know why you're doing this." Reassured by her father's words, Amelia threw herself back into her work. But the question Lucas had posed continued to echo in her mind, and over time, she realized it wasn't enough to just act kindly. She wanted to understand why kindness mattered so deeply to her. And so, with renewed determination, she set out to learn more about the people she was helping, listening to their stories, their dreams, and even their regrets. One afternoon, while visiting a local senior center, Amelia sat down with Mr. Carson, a retired musician who had lost his wife years before. As they chatted, he began to play an old song on his guitar, his fingers moving gracefully across the strings. Amelia was captivated, and when he finished, she clapped enthusiastically, her eyes wide with admiration. "That was beautiful, Mr. Carson," she said. "Do you miss performing?" He looked at her thoughtfully, then nodded. "I do, Amelia. Music was my life, but after my wife passed, I didn't have anyone to play for. You've given me a reason to pick up my guitar again." In that moment, Amelia realized that each person she helped was helping her in return. They were teaching her that kindness was more than an act. It was a bridge, connecting hearts and healing wounds. One night, just as they were closing up their kitchen, Ethan received a call from the mayor's office. The mayor himself wanted to meet with Amelia and discuss her project. Thrilled but nervous, Amelia prepared herself, imagining what the mayor might say. But when they arrived at City Hall, she was unprepared for the surprise that awaited her. After greeting them warmly, the mayor looked at Amelia with a glint in his eye. "Young lady, you brought something incredible to our town," he said. "We've heard from so many residents about the difference you're making, and we'd like to support you in expanding the Golden Friends initiative citywide." Amelia's mouth dropped open. "Citywide?" "Yes," the mayor confirmed. "We want to bring this project to other schools, other neighborhoods. And we want you to be our honorary ambassador for the program." The news left Amelia buzzing with excitement and a bit of fear. She looked up at her father, searching for reassurance. Ethan's proud smile gave her the courage she needed. "I'll do my best," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you for this opportunity." As the Golden Friends initiative grew, so did Amelia's responsibilities. She found herself juggling school, friendships, and her newfound duties as the face of a movement. Yet, no matter how busy things got, she never lost sight of her original goal: to honor Mr. Hughes's memory and bring hope to those who felt alone. But then, just as everything seemed to be going smoothly, a sudden obstacle appeared. A prominent business owner in town, Mr. Walters, publicly criticized the initiative, claiming it was a sentimental waste of time and that resources could be better spent on practical projects. His harsh words echoed across social media and even made it into the local paper, casting a shadow over Amelia's efforts. At first, Amelia was devastated. She felt her confidence waver, wondering if Mr. Walters was right. Perhaps her project was too sentimental, too idealistic. But then, as she looked around at the lives she had touched, the people she had connected with, and the love that had blossomed from one simple act of kindness, a quiet resolve took hold. Determined to confront the criticism, Amelia decided to visit Mr. Walters in person. With her father by her side, she walked into his office, her heart pounding, but her gaze steady. She explained why she had started the Golden Friends initiative, her voice filled with sincerity and conviction. To her surprise, Mr. Walters listened intently. When she finished, he leaned back thoughtful. "You're a brave girl, Amelia," he said, his tone softened. "I didn't expect you to come here and speak to me yourself. Maybe I misjudged you." The meeting ended on a hopeful note, and though he hadn't promised his support, Amelia felt a weight lifted. She had stood up for her beliefs and shown him the heart behind her mission. As they walked out of the office, her father placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That took courage, sweetheart. Not everyone would have done what you just did." From that moment on, Amelia's resolve only strengthened. She continued her work with renewed passion, knowing that not everyone would understand, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the impact she was making, one life at a time. The initiative continued to grow, and Amelia's efforts began to attract attention beyond their town. Letters poured in from people all over, each story more moving than the last. And as she read them, she realized that her work was no longer just a tribute to Mr. Hughes. It had become a mission, a way of life. The success of the Golden Friends initiative quickly expanded beyond Amelia's expectations. Inspired by her tenacity, schools from neighboring towns began to reach out, eager to replicate her program. As Amelia's influence grew, so did her responsibilities, and she found herself juggling media interviews, school, and her community work. But each time the weight felt too heavy, she remembered Mr. Hughes and the simple act of kindness that had sparked it all. One evening, as she and her father were winding down, Ethan glanced at her with a proud, yet worried expression. "You're doing so much, sweetheart. I just want to make sure you're not taking on too much. You're still so young." Amelia looked up from the stack of letters she'd been reading, her eyes filled with determination. "I know, Daddy, but I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. Besides, I'm not alone. I have you, and so many people helping me." Her words reassured Ethan, though he couldn't shake a feeling of worry about her intense workload. As her work gained momentum, a mysterious envelope arrived at their door one afternoon. It was marked with no return address, only a simple gold seal on the back. Inside was a note written in an elegant hand, congratulating Amelia on her accomplishments and inviting her to speak at an exclusive gala in the city, a fundraiser hosted by one of the country's most renowned philanthropists, Evelyn Bradford. The invitation felt like a dream come true, yet Amelia couldn't help but feel intimidated. Ethan encouraged her. "Evelyn Bradford is known for her dedication to social causes. She's the perfect person to hear your story and maybe even support the Golden Friends initiative. Imagine the difference it could make." With her father's reassurance, Amelia accepted the invitation. As they prepared for the gala, she practiced her speech, balancing her excitement with nerves. On the night of the event, Amelia donned a simple yet elegant dress, a thoughtful gift from her community. With Ethan at her side, they arrived at the grand ballroom, where chandeliers glistened and the city's elite mingled in polished suits and glamorous gowns. When it was her turn to speak, Amelia took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. She began with the story of Mr. Hughes, the old man who had once celebrated his birthday alone, and how that night had inspired her mission. She shared the lives that had been touched, the friendships that had been formed, and the difference that kindness had made in her community. As she spoke, the room fell silent, captivated by her sincerity and warmth. She ended with a heartfelt message. Kindness doesn't require wealth or power. It just requires a willing heart and the courage to make someone's day a little brighter. Her words lingered in the air, and the audience erupted in applause. After the speech, Evelyn Bradford approached her, a gentle smile lighting up her face. "Amelia," she began, "your story moved me deeply. I lost my father years ago, and your words reminded me of the moments I missed with him. Your initiative is beautiful. How can I help you expand this?" Amelia's eyes widened, and for a moment, she struggled to find the right words. "I want to bring the Golden Friends initiative to more communities, to reach people who need kindness the most." Evelyn nodded, touched by Amelia's vision and dedication. Over the following weeks, Evelyn's foundation partnered with the Golden Friends initiative, helping them secure resources, volunteers, and even transportation to reach elderly people in more isolated areas. Amelia and her father watched in amazement as her project transformed from a small-town effort to a regional movement, drawing volunteers from across the state. Local newspapers covered the story, praising Amelia's initiative and the impact it had on the community. But as the initiative flourished, so did the challenges. One afternoon, Amelia received a message from a journalist asking probing questions about the funding and questioning whether the program was really as effective as it seemed. Rumors started swirling that the project was receiving unfair resources, sparking debates and drawing both support and criticism. The weight of the scrutiny unsettled Amelia, who felt a deep responsibility to prove that the Golden Friends initiative was making a genuine impact. She spent sleepless nights strategizing with Ethan, worrying that her dream might unravel. Ethan, sensing her strain, decided to surprise her with a trip back to Benny's kitchen, hoping it would remind her of why she started. Sitting at their usual booth, Amelia was flooded with memories of that first night with Mr. Hughes. Just then, she noticed a familiar face across the room. Clara, Mr. Hughes's former housekeeper, was dining with a group of elderly residents, all laughing and chatting. Clara waved her over, and Amelia joined them, instantly embraced by warm greetings and laughter. Amelia shared the struggles she'd been facing, and Clara placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Remember, Amelia, it's not about pleasing everyone. People will criticize, but the lives you've touched, those are what matter. One of the residents, a man named Henry, leaned in, his eyes crinkling with a warm smile. I used to think nobody cared, that I'd spend my final years alone. But you changed that, Amelia. You've given me and others a new family. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. The resident's words renewed Amelia's determination, and she returned home with a strengthened resolve. She began focusing on building evidence of the initiative's impact, collecting testimonials, stories, and measurable results that demonstrated how it was changing lives. With Evelyn's foundation and her father's support, Amelia organized a public event to showcase these stories, inviting the community to see firsthand the difference the initiative was making. On the day of the event, Amelia took to the stage once more, this time filled with a quiet confidence. She introduced several seniors and volunteers who shared their stories, each one more moving than the last. As the audience listened, many were moved to tears, including the skeptical journalist who had started the rumors. At the end of the event, he approached Amelia, an apologetic look on his face. "Amelia," he said, "I've seen a lot of projects come and go, but this is the real thing. I'm sorry for the doubt I cast on your work. You've reminded me of the power of a simple gesture, and I'd like to write a story to set things right." Amelia smiled, grateful but humble. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just wanted to make a difference, like Mr. Hughes did for me." As the initiative continued to grow, Amelia found herself facing opportunities she never imagined. She was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and even international forums on the power of youth-driven social change. Each step along the way, she carried Mr. Hughes's memory with her, reminding herself of the kindness and humility that had started it all. But the greatest surprise came one quiet evening as Amelia was reading through letters she had received from people her initiative had helped. In one envelope, she found a handwritten note and a photograph of a familiar spot, Mr. Hughes's old home. The note read, "Dear Amelia, I hope this finds you well. I've heard of the remarkable work you're doing. I wanted to reach out because Mr. Hughes left something behind that I think was meant for you. When you're ready, come visit. There's something I think you should see." The note was unsigned, but Amelia recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Clara. She showed the letter to Ethan, her heart pounding with curiosity and a bit of fear. "What do you think she meant, Daddy?" Ethan's expression grew thoughtful. "I'm not sure, but it sounds like Mr. Hughes had one last message for you." That weekend, they made the journey to Mr. Hughes's former home, a quaint little cottage nestled at the end of a quiet street. Clara welcomed them with a warm smile and led them inside. She guided them to a small study, where shelves were lined with books and trinkets from years gone by. Clara reached for a small, locked box on a high shelf and handed it to Amelia, her eyes soft with emotion. "This was Mr. Hughes's treasure box," Clara said quietly. "He asked me to give it to the person who'd bring him happiness in his last days." "That's you, Amelia." With trembling hands, Amelia opened the box. Inside, she found old photographs of Mr. Hughes with his family, small tokens from his travels, and a letter addressed to her. She unfolded the letter, her eyes scanning the faded ink as tears welled up. The letter read, "Dear Amelia, if you're reading this, then you've carried on our moment of kindness farther than I could have ever imagined. Thank you for reminding me of the goodness in this world and for bringing light to my last days. Remember, even as the years go by, that kindness is the most precious gift we can give. Keep it alive, dear Amelia. You are my legacy, and I am forever grateful." The words filled Amelia's heart with warmth and resolve. She turned to her father, her voice thick with emotion. "I will keep it alive, Daddy. I promise." Leaving the cottage, Amelia felt a new strength within her. She knew that no matter where life took her, Mr. Hughes's memory would guide her. She had started this journey to honor his legacy, But along the way, it had become her own, a life dedicated to compassion, connection, and the simple yet profound power of kindness. As they drove home, Ethan looked over at Amelia, seeing the determination in her eyes. "What's next for you, my little changemaker?" he asked with a smile. Amelia thought about all the people she still wanted to reach, the lives yet to touch, and the stories she'd yet to hear. "I think it's time to take the Golden Friends initiative even further," she replied with a grin. After all, kindness has no borders. Amelia's promise to keep Mr. Hughes's legacy alive fueled her every step forward. Her vision for the Golden Friends initiative had grown beyond what she ever thought possible. Yet the journey was far from easy. The larger the project grew, the more complex and challenging it became. Volunteers were needed in larger numbers. Supplies had to be coordinated across different locations, and keeping the stories of each elderly friend alive in a meaningful way became increasingly difficult. One evening, as Amelia was setting up for a community meeting, she noticed an older woman standing quietly at the back of the room, observing the bustling volunteers. She had a certain dignity about her, dressed in a dark wool coat with a floral scarf draped around her shoulders. Her face was stern but softened by an unmistakable curiosity. Amelia approached her, smiling warmly. "Hello, I'm Amelia. Are you here for the meeting?" The woman nodded, her expression unreadable. "I am. I've heard about your work from many in the community. I'm Esther, and I've lived in this town for over 60 years. I'm not sure if your project is all that it's made out to be, but I thought I'd come see for myself." Amelia was taken aback by Esther's candor, but she welcomed her with open arms. "I'm glad you came, Ms. Esther," she said. "You're right to question things. Sometimes we need skeptics to keep us grounded. Maybe you'll be able to help us see things we're missing." Esther's sharp gaze softened, but only slightly. "Perhaps I will. Let's see if you young ones are as committed as you say." Despite her initial skepticism, Esther became a regular at the community events, watching Amelia's work unfold and offering her own observations. Amelia quickly came to admire Esther's wisdom and appreciated her blunt honesty, which often kept everyone on their toes. But Amelia sensed there was more to Esther than met the eye. The elder woman kept her distance, rarely sharing much about herself or her life. She had a wall around her heart, and though she was a regular fixture, she was like a distant star, visible but hard to reach. One evening, Amelia and Esther were tidying up after a particularly exhausting event. Esther seemed unusually quiet, staring out the window with a wistful look in her eyes. Gathering her courage, Amelia asked softly, "Ms. Esther, what brought you here tonight? It must be tiring for you to attend so many meetings and events. What keeps you coming back?" Esther hesitated, her gaze never leaving the window. After a long pause, she sighed deeply. "You remind me of someone I once knew, someone who believed in changing the world through kindness." Her voice wavered, and she turned to Amelia, her eyes glistening. "My late husband, Samuel. He was the kindest man I ever met, and he always dreamed of helping others. But life got in the way, and that dream never came to pass. Watching you, Amelia, it feels as though I'm seeing a part of him again." Amelia reached out, placing a gentle hand on Esther's arm. "Thank you for sharing that with me. Maybe, in some way, you and I can bring a bit of his dream to life together." Esther nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek as she allowed herself to remember. From that day on, her involvement deepened, and the wall around her heart began to crumble. She opened up more, sharing her life stories with Amelia and the volunteers, drawing laughter, tears, and wonder with each memory. Amelia soon realized that Esther was not just a supporter, but a mentor, and her wisdom guided the initiative in ways Amelia hadn't foreseen. Around this time, Amelia received a call from Evelyn Bradford, the philanthropist who had first supported the Golden Friends initiative. "Amelia," Evelyn said with an excited tone, "I want to invite you to an international conference on youth and community engagement. You've become a symbol of what young people can achieve, and your work has inspired communities well beyond our region." Amelia was thrilled yet apprehensive. Attending an international conference felt like stepping into an entirely new world. She shared the news with her father, who beamed with pride, and with Esther, who simply nodded and offered a piece of advice. "Remember, Amelia," she said, "no matter how far you go, no matter who praises you, stay true to why you began. Fame and recognition will come and go, but the impact you make on people's lives, that's what matters." Amelia held those words close to her heart as she prepared for the trip. When she arrived at the conference, she was surrounded by leaders from various fields, each sharing their own insights on community building and youth empowerment. She found herself both inspired and overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all. During a panel discussion, she spoke passionately about the Golden Friends Initiative, emphasizing that kindness and connection were at the heart of any lasting change. But during the conference, Amelia overheard a few attendees questioning the sustainability of youth-led initiatives. One influential speaker remarked, "Young people are full of energy and passion, but they don't have the longevity for true impact. When the enthusiasm fades, so does the initiative." Amelia felt a pang of doubt. Would her passion wane over time? Could she really maintain this work for the long haul? The questions lingered as she returned home, uncertain yet more determined to prove the skeptics wrong. Back in town, she poured herself into the initiative, working harder than ever to ensure its continued success. She revisited Esther's words, grounding herself in the reminder of why she started. And slowly, as she leaned into the work with renewed purpose, she noticed the strength of the community around her. The Golden Friends Initiative was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who had supported, doubted, or participated in it. One day, a letter arrived, bearing news that left Amelia speechless. The state government had recognized the impact of her work and was offering to fund the initiative on a much larger scale. The funding would allow the Golden Friends Initiative to expand across the state, but there was one catch. They wanted to establish a board to oversee the project, potentially taking some control away from Amelia and her local team. Ethan and Esther sat with Amelia as she weighed the decision. She was torn. The funding would bring incredible resources, but the thought of losing creative control over her own project felt like losing a part of herself. Esther, always the voice of wisdom, offered her perspective. "Amelia," she said, "sometimes letting go a little can allow something beautiful to grow. You started this journey with a single act of kindness, and it's blossomed into something beyond any one person's control. Trust that others will carry it forward with the same heart." After careful thought, Amelia agreed to the terms, with one condition. She would retain a guiding role, ensuring that the initiative's core values remained intact. With this compromise, the project expanded, touching more lives than she could have ever imagined. Her decision marked a new chapter for the Golden Friends Initiative, one that involved a greater network of people all working together, each inspired by Amelia's dedication. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Amelia received an unexpected visit. It was Lucas, the boy from school who had once doubted her work, his face now softened by time and maturity. He shifted awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable, before speaking. "Amelia, I just wanted to apologize," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't understand back then. I thought what you were doing didn't matter. But I see it now. My grandmother, she's one of the people your initiative reached. And it changed her. It changed us." Amelia felt a lump in her throat. She had always hoped Lucas would one day see the value in her work. But hearing him admit it brought a sense of closure she hadn't known she needed. "Thank you, Lucas," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "It means a lot to hear that. I'm glad your grandmother felt the love we wanted to share." As Lucas left, Amelia realized just how deeply the Golden Friends Initiative had touched lives, not just among the elderly but across generations. It was no longer just about helping the lonely. It was about transforming relationships, bridging gaps, and creating a sense of community that hadn't existed before. With each passing day, Amelia saw how her initial vision had sparked something far greater than herself. She witnessed young volunteers growing into leaders, elderly participants finding new meaning in their later years, and families coming together in ways they hadn't before. And with each moment, she felt the presence of Mr. Hughes and his quiet strength, guiding her forward. The Golden Friends Initiative had become a movement of kindness, resilience, and hope, a testament to the power of one young girl's determination to make sure no one would ever have to feel alone. The town itself had transformed, its residents now sharing a connection and purpose that defied age, background, or circumstance. Yet Amelia felt, deep down, that her journey was still just beginning. There was more to learn, more lives to touch, and more to give. As she looked ahead, her heart swelled with the knowledge that wherever kindness led her, it would always be worth following. As Amelia continued to lead the Golden Friends initiative, her life took on a rhythm that balanced school, friendships, and the ever-growing responsibilities of the project. She thrived in the support of her father, her mentor Esther, and the countless volunteers who had come to believe in her vision. But life, as it often does, threw her an unexpected curveball. One evening, Amelia received a phone call from Evelyn Bradford. Her voice, usually steady and reassuring, carried an edge of urgency. "Amelia, I just received news that our funding might be in jeopardy. Some of our largest donors are withdrawing their support due to financial pressures. I wanted you to hear it from me first." Amelia's heart sank. She had known the initiative's expansion required significant funding, but she hadn't anticipated such a sudden crisis. She struggled to keep her voice steady. "What can we do, Evelyn? How do we keep it going?" Evelyn paused before responding, choosing her words carefully. "We'll brainstorm options, but I think it might be time to scale back some programs to keep the most essential parts of the initiative alive. It's not ideal, but it's a necessary step." After the call, Amelia sat silently, trying to process the news. Scaling back meant letting go of some of the connections she had worked so hard to build. She couldn't imagine telling the elderly friends she'd made that visits would be less frequent or that they'd have fewer volunteers to look forward to. That night, sleep eluded her as she wrestled with her options, wondering how to break the news to everyone. The next morning, she shared the situation with her father and Esther. "I feel like I'm letting everyone down," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "All these people, young and old, who count on us, it's like tearing down everything we've built." Esther, who had seen Amelia overcome so many obstacles, met her with a calm, reassuring gaze. "Amelia," she said, "you've built something stronger than you realize. A shortage of funds doesn't mean the end. You have people who believe in you. Let's bring them together and see what we can do. Perhaps it's time to reach out, to let others help carry the load." Inspired by Esther's words, Amelia organized an emergency meeting with her volunteers and supporters. She explained the situation, her voice cracking with emotion. "I know this news is difficult, but I'm here because I believe in this initiative with all my heart. If we work together, I believe we can keep it going." The room was silent for a moment. Then one by one, people began to stand up and offer their help. Some proposed fundraising events, others volunteered to cover expenses out of pocket, and a local business owner even offered to donate supplies. The energy in the room was electric, fueled by the determination and unity of everyone present. To Amelia's amazement, the community's efforts quickly took off. Within weeks, they organized a series of fundraisers, bake sales, silent auctions, and a charity concert featuring local bands. The event became the talk of the town, with everyone pitching in to ensure its success. Amelia watched in awe as people of all ages came together, united by a single purpose: keeping the Golden Friends initiative alive. At the charity concert, Amelia was called up to the stage. She looked out at the crowd, a mix of faces, young and old, familiar and new. Her heart swelled with gratitude, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of her responsibilities lift just a little. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling. "Thank you for believing in this initiative, for reminding me that kindness is a force stronger than any obstacle. This isn't just my project, it's ours. Together, we've created something beautiful." The crowd erupted in applause, and as Amelia left the stage, she spotted Lucas, the boy who had once doubted her, cheering from the front row. Their eyes met, and he gave her a thumbs up, a silent acknowledgement of their journey from skepticism to understanding. Yet, just when it seemed the crisis had passed, a new challenge arose, one that struck closer to home. Late one evening, as Amelia was finishing up her homework, she heard her father cough, a deep, unsettling sound that sent a chill through her. She looked up and saw him leaning against the kitchen counter, his face pale. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, concern tightening in her chest. Ethan waved her off with a faint smile. "Just a little tired, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about." But over the next few days, his health seemed to worsen. His once strong frame grew weaker, and the cough persisted. Amelia couldn't ignore the fear gnawing at her heart. She urged him to see a doctor, and after much persuasion, he finally agreed. When the results came back, the diagnosis was far from what Amelia had expected. Her father had a serious illness, one that would require intensive treatment. The news shattered her, and she found herself caught between her responsibilities to the Golden Friends initiative and her deep need to be there for her father. As the days went by, she struggled to balance the demands of the initiative with her role as Ethan's primary caregiver. Her father, ever supportive, encouraged her to focus on her work, but Amelia couldn't shake the guilt of leaving him alone during treatments. She confided in Esther, who listened patiently before offering a gentle solution. "Amelia, perhaps it's time to lean on others," Esther suggested. "You've given so much to this community. Let them give back to you." Though hesitant, Amelia realized she had no choice but to delegate her responsibilities. She reached out to her core team of volunteers, entrusting them with different aspects of the initiative. It was difficult to let go, but she knew she had to focus on her father. To her surprise, the community rallied around her once again, stepping up to manage events, coordinate visits, and ensure the initiative continued seamlessly. Volunteers even organized a rotation to provide meals for her and her father, showing her that the kindness she had sown was being returned to her in ways she had never anticipated. In her moments of solitude, sitting beside her father's hospital bed, Amelia found herself reflecting on everything she had learned. She thought of Mr. Hughes, of the simple act that had set her on this journey, and of the community that had become her extended family. She understood now that the Golden Friends Initiative was not just a project, but a living, breathing testament to the power of connection and compassion. One evening, as she and her father shared a quiet conversation, Ethan took her hand and looked at her with a mixture of pride and love. "Amelia," he said softly, "you've done something incredible. You've touched lives in ways most people only dream of. No matter what happens, I want you to remember that." Tears filled Amelia's eyes as she squeezed his hand. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Daddy. You taught me everything I know about kindness." As Ethan's health slowly improved, Amelia resumed her active role in the initiative, reinvigorated by the resilience of her community and the strength of her father. But she carried a deeper wisdom now, one shaped by the trials she had faced. She knew that the initiative was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had poured their hearts into it. Months later, on the anniversary of the initiative's founding, Amelia organized a celebration to honor the people who had supported her journey. She invited Esther, Evelyn, Lucas, her core team, and dozens of elderly residents and volunteers who had become like family. The gathering was held in the town square, beautifully decorated with lights and photos capturing moments from the initiative's history. As the festivities began, Esther took Amelia's hand and led her to the front of the crowd. "Everyone," Esther announced, her voice filled with pride, "we are here because of one young girl's courage to change the world, one act of kindness at a time. Amelia, thank you for giving us all a place to belong, a purpose to hold on to." The crowd erupted in applause, and as Amelia looked around, her heart swelled with love and gratitude. Each face represented a life touched, a connection made, and a story of kindness that would continue long after she was gone. When the celebration wound down and only a few close friends remained, Esther handed Amelia a small, wrapped gift. "This is from me, and from Mr. Hughes," she said, her eyes shining with warmth. Amelia unwrapped the gift to find a beautifully bound notebook, its pages filled with stories and memories from the elderly residents she had helped over the years. Each entry was a testament to the lives she had touched and the moments of joy she had brought into the world. With tears in her eyes, Amelia hugged Esther tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means more to me than anything." As the night drew to a close, Amelia walked home under a blanket of stars, feeling a profound sense of peace. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the unwavering support of the people who had become her family. And somewhere in the stillness, as she gazed up at the stars, she felt Mr. Hughes's presence, a quiet reassurance, a gentle reminder that kindness, no matter how small, could light the darkest paths. From that day on, Amelia dedicated herself anew to the Golden Friends Initiative, her heart forever guided by the simple, powerful truth that one act of compassion could ripple out, touching countless lives and inspiring a legacy of kindness that would last generations. In the months that followed, Amelia embraced her role with renewed purpose. The Golden Friends Initiative flourished, not just in her town, but in neighboring communities, thanks to the support and dedication of everyone she had inspired. It seemed that every person who joined the movement brought their own unique touch, adding depth and warmth to the initiative. One day, as Amelia was sifting through letters from supporters, she came across an unfamiliar envelope with an elegant seal. Inside was a handwritten note from a lawyer representing Mr. Hughes's estate, a discovery that left her speechless. The note revealed that, in his will, Mr. Hughes had set aside a small piece of property and a modest endowment for a cause that lights the world with kindness. The lawyer explained that he believed Amelia's initiative fulfilled Mr. Hughes's wish and offered the space as a potential new headquarters for the Golden Friends Initiative. Amelia read and reread the letter, disbelief mixed with overwhelming gratitude. She rushed to share the news with Esther, who was thrilled. "Do you see, Amelia?" Esther said with a sparkle in her eye. "You were always meant to carry this forward. It's as if he knew that someday you'd need a home for your work." They arranged to visit the property, a quaint building with a cozy garden, surrounded by flowering trees. Though modest in size, it felt like a sanctuary, and Amelia knew it would be perfect for her growing organization. She and Esther wasted no time rallying volunteers to prepare the space, and the community's enthusiasm made it come alive. People of all ages came together to paint walls, plant flowers, and set up furniture, transforming the building into a warm, welcoming hub. When the new headquarters opened, the entire town turned up for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Amelia stood before the crowd, humbled and grateful. She looked out at the familiar faces, her father, whose health had thankfully improved, Esther, her rock and guiding star, and even Lucas, who had become one of her most dedicated volunteers. As she cut the ribbon, applause erupted, and Amelia felt a wave of pride mixed with disbelief. Her journey had started with a single, simple act, a wish to make an old man feel loved on his birthday. And now, here they were, launching a permanent home for kindness and connection. But just as Amelia thought things were settling into a new chapter, a twist emerged that no one saw coming. One late afternoon, as Amelia was wrapping up a meeting, a stranger walked into the headquarters. He was tall and well-dressed, his gaze intense as he took in the room filled with volunteers. He introduced himself as Victor, Mr. Hughes's nephew, a relative Amelia hadn't known existed. Victor's expression was unreadable as he walked over to Amelia. "I've been hearing about this initiative," he said, his tone neither warm nor cold. "And I've come to see if it truly honors my uncle's memory." Amelia sensed a storm brewing in his words, and her heart sank slightly. She explained the origins of the Golden Friends Initiative, sharing how Mr. Hughes's kindness had inspired her to make a difference. But Victor's face remained impassive, and she felt his gaze searching for flaws. "I appreciate what you've done," he said slowly, "but I'm concerned that my uncle's wishes might have been misinterpreted. This property, this initiative, does it truly serve the legacy he would have wanted?" His words struck her like a blow. Doubt crept in, and Amelia struggled to respond. "I believe it does," she managed, her voice steady. "Mr. Hughes wanted to spread kindness. He left us this endowment for that very purpose, and we've honored it with every visit, every person we've helped." Victor seemed unconvinced, his face a mask of skepticism. "Then prove it," he said finally, his voice challenging. "Show me that my uncle's legacy is truly safe in your hands." Amelia was shaken but resolute. She invited Victor to shadow her for a week, to see firsthand the impact of the Golden Friends initiative. Though he agreed, she could sense his reluctance, his hidden expectations that he might find fault. The week that followed was filled with tension, as Victor joined her on visits and meetings, observing each interaction with a critical eye. Yet, something unexpected began to unfold. As they moved from home visits to community events, Amelia noticed subtle shifts in Victor's demeanor. At first, he was aloof, even distant, but the more he saw, the more his stern expression softened. When they visited an elderly woman named Mabel, whose only source of companionship was the weekly visit from the Golden Friends, Victor listened quietly as she expressed her gratitude. "Before Amelia and her friends started coming, I didn't have anyone," Mabel said, her voice wavering. "But now, I have a reason to look forward to each day. I even started knitting again, something I haven't done in years." Victor was quiet on the drive back, but Amelia noticed him staring thoughtfully out the window. The next day, they visited a local school where young volunteers shared their experiences of working with the elderly, describing how the initiative had changed their lives as much as it had helped others. One of the students, a shy girl named Leila, stepped forward and spoke directly to Victor. "This initiative gave me confidence," she said. "I used to feel like I couldn't make a difference. But now, I know that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. It changed mine." Amelia watched as Victor's gaze softened, and she sensed the cracks in his skepticism growing wider. Each day, as he saw more of the lives touched by the initiative, his guarded demeanor seemed to waver. Finally, on the last day of his shadowing, Amelia took Victor to visit the fountain that had been dedicated to Mr. Hughes. They sat quietly by the water, each lost in thought. After a long silence, Victor turned to her, his expression a mix of humility and respect. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I came here thinking I would find faults, reasons to take back what my uncle left behind. But you've created something truly remarkable. My uncle would have been proud." Relief flooded Amelia's heart, and she smiled, feeling the weight of the past week lift. "Thank you, Victor. This isn't just my work, it's everyone's. Your uncle gave me a gift, and I'm just trying to share it with as many people as possible." Victor nodded, his gaze warm. "I'd like to help," he said, surprising her. "Whatever you need, funding, resources, connections, I want to make sure the Golden Friends initiative reaches even further." Over the next few months, Victor became one of the initiative's strongest advocates, using his network to secure additional support and even helping organize events. His transformation became a powerful reminder that skepticism could be overcome by compassion, that even the most guarded hearts could be softened by kindness. With the added support, the Golden Friends initiative expanded to new heights. Victor's contributions enabled Amelia to set up workshops, create intergenerational programs, and even launch an online platform where people from all over the world could share stories, connect, and build their own communities of kindness. One evening, as Amelia was preparing a speech for an upcoming event, Esther walked into her office, her face filled with pride. "You've done something extraordinary, Amelia," she said softly. "You've taken a simple idea and turned it into a movement." Amelia smiled, a gentle sense of accomplishment settling over her. "I never imagined it would come this far, Esther. It feels like I'm just following where kindness leads." As the event unfolded, people from all walks of life gathered to celebrate the journey of the Golden Friends initiative. Amelia spoke with sincerity and warmth, reflecting on the story of Mr. Hughes and how his quiet, humble act of kindness had changed everything. She spoke of the challenges, the doubts, and the joy of seeing lives transformed. The crowd listened intently, some wiping away tears, others nodding in agreement. When she finished, a young girl approached her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Amelia," she asked, "do you think I can make a difference too, even if it's just something small?" Amelia knelt down, looking the girl in the eyes. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. "Kindness doesn't have to be big to matter. Every small act is like a ripple, and you never know how far it will go." As the girl walked away, inspired, Amelia felt the fullness of the journey she had undertaken. She realized that her work was no longer just about honoring Mr. Hughes. It was about empowering others to create their own legacies of compassion, to believe in the power of one small act to change the world. And as she looked out at the crowd, at Victor standing proudly among them, at her father, Esther, Lucas, and the many people who had joined her along the way, she knew that the Golden Friends Initiative was only the beginning. The world was full of people waiting for someone to reach out, to show them that they mattered. And Amelia was ready, knowing that kindness, like love, was a force that could never be exhausted. Wherever her journey led, she would carry forward the legacy of Mr. Hughes, the quiet man who had reminded her, and the world, that sometimes a single act of kindness could be enough to change everything. As the Golden Friends Initiative continued to blossom, Amelia's journey brought her deeper into a world of connections and emotions she had never anticipated. Every success felt like a triumph. Every life touched a reminder of the purpose behind her work. Yet, in the midst of all this, a letter arrived that would add a new layer of mystery, and perhaps destiny, to her path. One chilly autumn afternoon, Amelia found an unmarked envelope waiting on her desk at the initiative's headquarters. The handwriting was elegant and precise, and inside was a brief note, handwritten on thick, cream-colored paper. Dear Amelia, I have heard of your work and admire your dedication to bringing kindness into the world. Your initiative has reached hearts far beyond what you may realize. If you're interested in exploring new ways to expand your vision, I invite you to meet me at the Willow Grove Cafe this Friday at noon. You may find that you have more allies than you think. Warm regards, a friend. Amelia read the letter over and over, each word deepening her curiosity. She showed it to her father, Ethan, who shared her intrigue, but also her caution. It's mysterious, he said with a wry smile. But whoever it is, they seem genuinely interested in your work. I think you should go. When Friday arrived, Amelia dressed warmly, her heart fluttering with both excitement and a hint of apprehension. She made her way to the Willow Grove Cafe, a quaint spot she had visited only a few times. As she entered, her eyes scanned the room, unsure of who she was meeting. At a corner table, an older gentleman with silver hair and a kind face looked up, meeting her gaze with a knowing smile. He waved her over. "Amelia Green?" he asked, his voice rich with warmth and wisdom. "Thank you for coming. My name is Professor Alden. I've followed your journey with the Golden Friends Initiative, and I must say, you've inspired more people than you could ever know." Amelia sat down, feeling both flattered and curious. "Thank you, Professor. I didn't realize my work had reached so many." Professor Alden nodded, his eyes twinkling. "That's the beauty of kindness. It travels quietly, but powerfully, like ripples in a pond. I, too, have spent years studying and promoting the idea of compassionate communities, but what you've achieved is quite remarkable." Amelia listened as Professor Alden shared stories of his travels, his research, and the communities he had worked with to foster empathy and unity. She felt an instant connection with him, as if he were a kindred spirit. "Amelia," he said after a pause, "I reached out because I believe we can combine our efforts. I'm part of a network of people across the globe who are dedicated to building a kinder world. We call ourselves the Circle. Each member brings their own unique approach, whether it's through art, education, or community work. We've been watching your work, and I'd like to extend an invitation for you to join us." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. The idea of being part of something larger, something with a shared vision, filled her with excitement. "I'd be honored," she replied, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "What would joining the Circle entail?" Professor Alden smiled, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "We support one another's projects, provide resources, and sometimes even collaborate. I believe you'd be a tremendous asset, Amelia. Your compassion, your vision, it aligns perfectly with our mission. And together, I think we could bring the Golden Friends Initiative to places you might never have imagined." The prospect was thrilling, yet Amelia felt a tinge of uncertainty. "But I don't want to lose the personal connection I have with the community," she admitted. "The initiative started because of one person, and I never want to forget that." Professor Alden nodded, understanding. "And you won't have to. The Circle believes in honoring each unique story, each small act. We don't lose ourselves in scale. Instead, we amplify the reach without losing the heart. Over the next few weeks, Amelia met with members of the circle, each one bringing their own story of kindness and resilience. There was Mei Ling, an artist who created murals in struggling neighborhoods to spread messages of hope. Tomas, a teacher who used his free time to mentor young people and inspire them to pursue dreams they thought impossible. And Elena, a social worker who had dedicated her life to creating safe spaces for vulnerable communities. Each story filled Amelia with renewed purpose, and each person offered to help the Golden Friends initiative in their own way. One day, as Amelia and Professor Alden were brainstorming ways to expand the initiative, he leaned forward, his tone serious. Amelia, have you ever thought about creating a documentary? Sharing the stories of the elderly friends you've connected with, the young volunteers, and even your own journey? Imagine the impact it could have, reaching people across the world. The idea struck a chord in Amelia. A documentary would allow her to honor Mr. Hughes's memory in a way that words alone couldn't convey. It could show the world the faces and voices behind the Golden Friends initiative, revealing the beauty of each connection, each life. Eagerly, she began planning the project, enlisting a local filmmaker and gathering stories from people who had been touched by the initiative. Some of the elderly residents shared moments from their pasts, their joys, and their sorrows, while young volunteers spoke of the life lessons they had learned and the friendships they'd formed. As filming progressed, Amelia's father, Esther, Victor, and the entire community rallied behind her, contributing ideas, offering support, and even helping organize events to promote the documentary. The project became a collective effort, embodying the very spirit of the Golden Friends initiative. During one of the final days of filming, Amelia sat down for an interview. She looked into the camera, reflecting on her journey, from that first encounter with Mr. Hughes to the worldwide movement it had become. People often ask me why kindness matters, she said, her voice steady and heartfelt. I've learned that kindness is more than just an action. It's a bridge. It connects us, heals us, and reminds us that we belong to each other. As the documentary neared completion, news of its release spread quickly. Screenings were scheduled in schools, community centers, and even retirement homes, where people eagerly awaited the chance to see the film that had come to symbolize a movement of compassion. On the night of the premiere, Amelia found herself standing in front of a packed theater, her heart racing with anticipation. As the lights dimmed and the screen came to life, she watched as the stories unfolded, each frame a testament to the lives she had touched and the connections she had made. The audience was captivated, their eyes glistening with tears, their expressions filled with awe and warmth. When the film ended, the room erupted into applause. Amelia took the stage, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you, all of you, for believing in this journey. This isn't just my story, it's ours. Each one of you has been part of this, and together, we've shown that kindness is a force that can transform lives. After the premiere, people approached her with heartfelt words of gratitude and admiration. Some shared stories of their own, while others expressed their desire to start similar initiatives in their own towns. Amelia was deeply moved, realizing that the Golden Friends initiative was no longer confined to her community. It was now a symbol of hope, inspiring people across borders and backgrounds. But as the crowd began to thin, Amelia noticed an elderly woman lingering near the back of the room. She looked frail, but had a spark in her eyes that was unmistakably familiar. Amelia approached her, and the woman's face broke into a soft, knowing smile. Amelia, the woman said, her voice warm. I knew you're Mr. Hughes. He was a friend of mine from long ago, and he always had a heart for people. I don't think he ever imagined that one day his kindness would start a movement. He would have been so proud of you. Amelia's heart swelled with emotion as she embraced the woman, feeling as if a circle had closed, bringing Mr. Hughes's legacy back to where it had all begun. The woman handed her a small, time-worn book, saying, "He kept this journal. It's filled with his thoughts, his dreams, and his reflections on life. I think it belongs with you now." Later that night, Amelia opened the journal, her fingers tracing the pages as if they held a piece of Mr. Hughes himself. The entries revealed a man who had loved deeply, suffered greatly, and found solace in small acts of kindness. One entry stood out, written shortly after the loss of his family. Life is a way of taking from us, but kindness, it's something no loss can touch. I don't know what lies ahead, but I hope that one day, someone finds in kindness the strength that I have found. Tears filled Amelia's eyes as she closed the journal, feeling the weight of his words, his journey, and his legacy. She knew, now more than ever, that the Golden Friends Initiative was more than a project or a movement. It was the realization of a dream that had begun in the heart of a man who had once been alone. The next morning, Amelia gathered her closest friends and mentors, sharing the journal and her plans to honor Mr. Hughes's words by taking the initiative even further. With renewed determination, she set out to create new chapters of the Golden Friends Initiative in communities around the world, using the documentary as a bridge to connect people from all walks of life. And as she took her next steps, she carried Mr. Hughes's words in her heart, a guiding light that reminded her that kindness, no matter how small, could ripple through the world, changing lives in ways no one could ever fully see. As Amelia moved forward with her plans to expand the Golden Friends Initiative worldwide, she found herself both invigorated and challenged by the enormity of the task ahead. Each day brought new obstacles, from logistical setbacks to cultural barriers in the various communities they reached. But Amelia remained unwavering, her heart fueled by the legacy of Mr. Hughes and the journal she now carried with her everywhere. One particularly rainy afternoon, Amelia was at the initiative's headquarters, poring over applications for volunteers in a new country, when she received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was warm, but unfamiliar. "Hello, Amelia. My name is Sophia, and I'm calling from Brazil. I saw your documentary at a local community center, and I was so moved by your story and mission. We have many elderly people in our village who are isolated and need support. Could you help us start a chapter here?" Amelia felt a thrill of excitement, but tempered it with the knowledge of the work it would entail. Brazil was thousands of miles away, and she had never coordinated a chapter in a country so different from her own. But she could hear the hope in Sophia's voice, and she knew this was exactly the kind of challenge she wanted to take on. "Sophia," she replied warmly, "I would love to help. Let's work together to bring the Golden Friends Initiative to your village." Over the following months, Amelia and Sophia worked tirelessly, communicating over late-night video calls, sharing resources, and exchanging cultural insights. Sophia gathered a small group of dedicated volunteers who were eager to bring companionship to their elderly neighbors. Despite language barriers and technical glitches, the two young women forged a strong bond, united by their shared mission. Sophia's energy was infectious, and soon, the Golden Friends Initiative blossomed in her village. Volunteers began visiting elderly residents, organizing events, and creating spaces for young people to connect with their elders. Stories of laughter, love, and healing flooded back to Amelia, each one a reminder that kindness had no borders. As news of the initiative's success in Brazil spread, Amelia began receiving calls and letters from other communities across the world. From small towns in Eastern Europe to remote villages in Africa, people were reaching out, inspired by the documentary and eager to replicate the Golden Friends Initiative. But as the movement grew, so did the pressure. Balancing her studies, travel, and the expansion of the initiative began to take a toll on Amelia. She found herself struggling with exhaustion, often working late into the night and sacrificing her personal time. Ethan, always attuned to his daughter's well-being, noticed her fatigue and gently suggested she take a step back to recharge. "Amelia, even the strongest hearts need rest," he said, his eyes filled with fatherly concern. "You've done incredible things, but you can't pour from an empty cup. Let others help you carry this." Amelia knew he was right, but the idea of stepping back felt impossible. She couldn't bear the thought of letting anyone down. She shared her worries with Esther, who had always been a voice of wisdom. "Amelia," Esther said gently, "remember that kindness isn't just something you give to others. It's something you owe yourself too. Take time to renew your spirit. This journey will be long, and you need to be strong enough to walk it." With their encouragement, Amelia, reluctantly decided to take a short break. She delegated her responsibilities to a trusted team, including Victor, who had become a steadfast leader in the initiative. The rest was foreign to her. But as she allowed herself the space to breathe, she found her creativity and energy slowly returning. During this time, she received an invitation from the Circle, the global network of changemakers she had joined, to attend a retreat in the mountains of Switzerland. The retreat was designed to help leaders like her reconnect with their purpose and share their journeys with like-minded people. At first, Amelia hesitated. Traveling to Switzerland felt like an indulgence she couldn't afford. But Victor, who saw her struggle, gently urged her to go. "This retreat could be exactly what you need, Amelia. We'll hold down the fort here. You've given us the tools, and we'll make you proud." Reluctantly, Amelia agreed and found herself on a plane bound for Switzerland. The mountains, blanketed in snow, were breathtaking, and as she arrived at the retreat, a sense of peace washed over her. Here, she was surrounded by people who understood the weight of her mission and the sacrifices she had made. They shared their own stories of struggle and renewal, offering her perspectives she hadn't considered. One evening, sitting by the fireplace, Amelia met a woman named Leila, a humanitarian from Kenya who had dedicated her life to providing safe spaces for displaced children. Leila's gentle wisdom and compassion resonated deeply with Amelia, and the two quickly became friends. "Amelia," Leila said, "I can see the fire in you, but fires need tending, or they burn out. In my culture, we say that one person's light can light another's path, but if the light dims, it becomes difficult to see the way." Leila's words struck a chord, and Amelia realized that her exhaustion was dimming her ability to lead effectively. In that moment, she resolved to create a balance, to allow others to support her so that the light of the Golden Friends initiative could continue to shine brightly. When she returned home, Amelia felt transformed. She approached her work with a renewed sense of purpose, delegating responsibilities more freely and trusting her team to carry the mission forward. To her delight, the initiative continued to thrive, now propelled by the collective energy and passion of those she had inspired. Yet, just as things began to settle, an unexpected letter arrived from the village of Stalingrad in Eastern Europe. The letter was from a man named Luca, who wrote that he had seen the documentary and believed it would bring hope to his small village, where elderly residents lived in near isolation. His words were humble yet urgent, and he pleaded for help, saying, "We have lost so much over the years, but I believe your initiative could bring life back to our village." Amelia, moved by Luca's plea, knew she had to help. But Stalingrad was a remote place, and resources were limited. She decided to rally her team, raising funds to send supplies and volunteers to establish the first international branch of the Golden Friends Initiative in Stalingrad. After months of preparation, Amelia and a small group of volunteers finally made the journey to the village. When they arrived, they were met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism from the villagers, who had grown wary of outsiders. But Luca, a tall man with a warm smile and weathered hands, greeted them with open arms. "Welcome to Stalingrad," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the hope we have been waiting for." Over the next few weeks, Amelia and her team worked tirelessly to gain the trust of the villagers. They organized gatherings, shared meals, and listened to stories of hardship and resilience. Slowly, the villagers began to open up, and Amelia realized that they weren't just offering companionship. They were rebuilding a sense of community that had been lost for generations. One evening, as they gathered around a fire under the starlit sky, an elderly woman named Maria shared her story of survival during the war. Her voice was filled with strength and sorrow as she spoke of the friends and family she had lost. She looked at Amelia, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You bring back what we thought was gone: love, friendship, family. For that, we are forever thankful." The words moved Amelia deeply. She had come to Stalingrad to offer kindness, but it was the villagers who were teaching her the true depth of resilience, the power of connection even in the face of unspeakable loss. When it was time to leave, the villagers held a small farewell ceremony, presenting Amelia with a hand-woven shawl as a symbol of their gratitude. Luca embraced her tightly, whispering, "You have given us more than you know. We are family now." As Amelia and her team returned home, she knew that her journey was far from over. The world was full of places like Stalingrad, places waiting for someone to ignite the spark of kindness and connection. Inspired by the experience, Amelia launched a new chapter within the initiative, Friends Across Borders. This program aimed to connect communities worldwide, allowing volunteers to share stories, resources, and friendship across cultures. She envisioned a network where kindness could flow freely, building bridges between people who might otherwise never meet. Back home, the Golden Friends initiative continued to flourish, now powered by the collective spirit of everyone involved. Amelia often thought of Mr. Hughes, the man whose solitary birthday had sparked a movement that now spanned continents. She felt his presence in every step she took, his gentle guidance reminding her that kindness, no matter where it began, could transform the world. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that this journey, this mission of compassion, was endless. There would always be someone waiting, someone needing to be reminded that they were not alone. And as long as she could, she would keep walking, keep reaching out, and keep lighting the way for others to follow. As the Golden Friends initiative continued to reach new corners of the world, Amelia's life seemed more fulfilling than ever. She was preparing for a global summit on social change, where she would speak alongside other visionaries about her journey and the importance of kindness. Invitations for new chapters were flooding in from everywhere, places she had never dreamed of visiting. It was all coming together beyond her wildest expectations. However, just a few days before her departure, Amelia received a mysterious package. There was no return address, only a note inside, written in hurried handwriting. Asterisk, there are things about Mr. Hughes's life that you don't know. If you want the truth, meet me at the old lighthouse, Sunday at midnight. Asterisk. Amelia's heart raced as she read the note. Who could have sent this? And what could they mean by the truth? She was filled with questions and an odd sense of dread. She'd always thought she knew everything about Mr. Hughes. His story was at the heart of her initiative. But now, a spark of doubt ignited in her mind. Could there be more to his story? When Sunday arrived, Amelia couldn't resist the pull of the mystery. She told her closest confidants, her father and Esther, about the message. Despite their concerns, she promised to be careful and went to the lighthouse alone. The night was dark, and the winds howled as she approached the towering, weathered structure. She felt a chill run down her spine, but steadied herself. Inside the lighthouse, a dim light flickered, and there, waiting in the shadows, was a figure cloaked in darkness. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face Amelia didn't recognize. An older man with piercing eyes, filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Amelia Green," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the crashing waves outside. "I'm someone who knew Mr. Hughes in ways that no one else did." Amelia's heart pounded. "What do you mean? Who are you?" The man took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "I am his son." The words hit Amelia like a thunderclap. His son? But he never mentioned. He was all alone. He had no family left. "That's what everyone thought," the man said, his voice laced with pain. "But there are reasons, powerful reasons, why my father kept his past hidden. He never wanted anyone to know. Until now." Amelia felt her world tilt. The foundation of her journey, the story she had shared with the world, suddenly felt unstable. She needed to know more. "Why now? Why are you coming forward after all these years?" The man looked away, his face etched with regret. "Because you've given my father a legacy he never thought he deserved. But there are parts of his story that would change everything you know, parts that are dangerous. Secrets he took to the grave, or so he thought." "What secrets?" Amelia whispered, her mind racing. What was he hiding? The man's eyes met hers, filled with a haunted intensity. "There are people who would do anything to keep his past buried, Amelia. They're already watching you, following every step of the Golden Friends initiative. And if you dig too deep, they won't let you go unscathed." Amelia's pulse quickened, her resolve growing. She knew that turning back now would be impossible. This wasn't just about honoring Mr. Hughes anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice firm. The man studied her for a moment, as if gauging her strength. "You're braver than I expected. But this is only the beginning, Amelia. Once you step into my father's hidden past, there's no turning back." He handed her a small, weathered box, its surface scratched and faded with time. "Inside, you'll find letters. Letters my father wrote, but never sent. They hold the key to a story that he kept hidden his entire life. But remember, what you're about to learn will change everything." Amelia held the box, her hands trembling. She opened it slowly, finding letters in Mr. Hughes's familiar handwriting, each one beginning with words of regret, longing, and a plea for forgiveness. As she scanned the letters, she realized that the journey she thought she'd completed was only scratching the surface. There were veiled references to lost fortunes, broken alliances, and hints of powerful enemies who would stop at nothing to erase the Hughes legacy from history. Her mind raced with possibilities, the weight of what she held growing heavier by the second. She felt a sense of foreboding and yet an undeniable pull to continue. She couldn't shake the feeling that her mission was far from over. The man placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning, Amelia. If you're willing to follow this path, you'll need all the strength and courage you've shown so far, and even more." Amelia looked up, her eyes blazing with determination. She knew what she had to do. "All these years, I thought I knew Mr. Hughes," she whispered. "But now I realize all of this was just the beginning." Turning to the camera, she spoke directly to her viewers, her voice steady and resolute. "What do you think? Should I uncover the truth about Mr. Hughes's past, no matter the cost? Share your thoughts below, send this video to friends and family, and make sure to subscribe. This journey is far from over, and together, we'll face what's to come. Because all of this was just the beginning.